Please. Please, I'll get the money," Angelina begged in a trembling whisper, pressing her phone to her ear. Tears streaked her face as she crumpled against the dimly lit hallway wall just outside the kitchen. "Just don't hurt him. I'm begging you." Her voice broke on the plea. A distorted male voice on the other end snarled back, cold and merciless. "You have until dawn. If we don't have our money by then, your little brother's blood will be on your hands." The line went dead with a brutal finality. Angelina stared at the phone, a whimper catching in her throat. A sob welled up, and she clapped a hand over her mouth, sliding down the wall until she was crouched on the polished marble floor. Her heart slammed against her ribs as the threat echoed in her mind. Nico, her baby brother, taken by God knows who over a debt she had no way to pay. "This is my fault," she thought, panic tightening like a vice in her chest. She'd tried so hard to keep Nico safe. Ever since their father walked out and left them with nothing, she'd practically raised her little brother, but she couldn't watch him every minute. At 17, he'd gotten mixed up with the wrong people. She'd heard rumors he was running small errands for a local drug crew. She had confronted him and thought he'd quit. Apparently, she'd been wrong, terribly wrong. Now those people had him, and they wanted an impossible amount of money from her by sunrise. She had no one to turn to. Not the police. If she involved them, the kidnappers would know. And Matteo Vitale, the man who owned this opulent penthouse where she worked and lived. Definitely not him. Matteo was the most dangerous man in the city, a mafia boss whose very name made people tremble. If he discovered criminals were operating on his turf without permission, he'd respond with lethal force. And if he learned his own younger brother might be involved? Angelina shuddered. No, she couldn't involve Matteo. He was ruthless, and this situation was already volatile enough. She couldn't risk Nico's life in a mafia power struggle. Wiping furiously at her tears, Angelina forced herself upright. Her legs felt like lead, shaky and weak, but she had to move. She had to do something. The kidnappers wanted money. Money she didn't have. Maybe she could beg them to let her trade herself instead, or buy a little more time. If she could just talk to them face to face, maybe there was a chance to save Nico. Angelina swiped at her phone, checking the message with the drop-off location. Pier 27, an old waterfront warehouse before sunrise. Less than a few hours. A wave of helplessness threatened to swamp her, but she pushed it down. I have to at least try. She hurried down the back corridor toward the service elevator, keeping her footsteps light on the marble despite her racing pulse. If she was lucky, she could slip out of the penthouse without anyone noticing. At this late hour, most of the household staff were off duty or asleep. Matteo himself was likely in his private study or bedroom. Not that he'd pay attention to a maid coming or going. In the 6 months she'd worked for him, Angelina had become nearly invisible to Matteo Vitale. Or so she thought. She was so intent on escape that she almost ran headlong into a tall, shadowy figure emerging from a side hallway. Angelina gasped and stumbled back, her heart leaping into her throat. Matteo Vitale stepped into the faint light, and her stomach plunged. He was very much awake, it seemed, and dangerously observant. The soft glow of a wall sconce highlighted the sharp cut of his cheekbones and the dark slash of his eyebrows drawn together in a frown. His suit jacket was gone, leaving him in a fitted charcoal vest and rolled-up shirt sleeves that exposed the sinewy strength in his forearms. In the quiet midnight hush, he looked like a predator who owned the darkness around him. Angelina. Matteo's deep voice cut through the silence, smooth but edged with authority. He hardly ever addressed her by first name. Hearing it now, spoken so quietly, made her blood run cold. She froze, clutching her phone behind her back as if that could hide her distress. He must have heard something, her muffled crying, perhaps even part of the call. Struggling to steady her voice, Angelina dropped her gaze to the floor. Mr. Vitale, I didn't realize you were still up. I'm sorry if I disturbed. Look at me. The command was soft, but absolute. When she hesitated, a large hand gently but firmly tilted her chin up. Angelina's tear-filled eyes met Matteo's gaze. In his dark brown eyes she saw a storm of emotions, anger, concern, and a glint of something terrifyingly intense. His thumb brushed the wetness on her cheek, and she flinched in surprise at the unexpected tenderness. Matteo's jaw tightened. "Why are you crying?" he asked, each word deliberate. Words failed her. She couldn't possibly tell him the truth. Panic fluttered in her chest. "It's nothing, sir," she whispered. "Just some personal bad news, but it's under control. I'm fine." Her attempt at composure wavered as fresh tears threatened. Matteo's eyes narrowed. He glanced down, and with a start, Angelina realized the phone she was hiding behind her back was still connected to the call, the screen aglow with the call duration before it dropped. Matteo's gaze flicked back to hers, sharp and assessing. "Who was on the phone?" he asked, dangerously quiet. Angelina swallowed hard. "No one. I mean, just a friend," she lied weakly. "It's not important." His hand slid from her chin to her shoulder, a light but unyielding hold. "You were begging someone for money," he said, steel threading his voice, "and telling them not to hurt someone. Don't insult my intelligence by saying it was nothing or just a friend." Angelina's stomach churned. Of course he'd heard. Matteo's senses were as keen as any hunter's. Still, she grasped at straws to deflect him. "I was just being dramatic," she stammered. "My brother got into a little trouble with some loan sharks. I was trying to calm them down. But I can handle it. Loan sharks?" Matteo cut in, tone lethal. "In my city, anyone calling you at this hour making you cry is my business." His grip tightened ever so slightly on her shoulder. "Who are they?" She trembled under his touch. Matteo Vitale radiated power. Even standing still, he emanated a barely leashed violence that both scared and oddly reassured her. "Please, Angelina's eyes darted past him toward the elevator. Every minute brought Dawn closer and Nico in more peril. "Mr. Vitale, I have to go." She tried to step around him, desperate to escape and handle this on her own terms, but Matteo sidestepped smoothly, blocking her path. In one swift motion, he took the phone from her hand. Angelina startled and grabbed for it, but Matteo easily held it out of reach. With a quick glance at the screen, he noted the caller ID, an unknown number. His expression darkened further. "Give it back," she pleaded softly, her voice breaking. "I need to go." "You're not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening," he said, pocketing her phone. Though his tone remained calm, it brooked no argument. "Who threatened you? What do they want? The truth, Angelina." Angelina felt the walls closing in. She didn't have time for this, and involving Matteo could make everything so much worse. I can't," she managed, shaking her head. "I just have to handle it myself." Matteo's other hand came up, strong fingers gently cupping her other shoulder so he held her there, forcing her to face him. His touch was firm, but he was being careful, as if aware how fragile she felt. "You're shaking," he murmured. Indeed, a tremor coursed through her body that she couldn't hide. Matteo's eyes softened a fraction at her fear. "Angelina," he said, and this time her name was almost gentle. "Tell me who has your brother." Her eyes widened in shock. "How do you—" His lips pressed into a thin line. "You mentioned loan sharks and telling someone not to hurt him. I'm guessing that him is your brother." His gaze bore into her. "You told them you'll get the money." "What money? How much?" Angelina's throat felt parched. Matteo had deduced so much so fast. $75,000, she whispered. A low curse hissed from Matteo. "That's not a random sum," he muttered. For a man like him, it was pocket change, but he knew for someone like her, it was impossible. Angelina sagged, despair crashing over her. There was no use now. He wasn't going to let this go. Maybe he could help. But at what cost? If his notorious temper was unleashed, would Nico become collateral damage? Tears spilled down her cheeks. "They have Nico," she confessed in a broken rush. "They called and said if I don't bring $75,000 to Pier 27 before sunrise, they'll kill him." Matteo's fingers flexed on her shoulders, rage rippling through the tense lines of his body. He drew in a slow breath, trying to rein in his temper for her sake. "Who are they?" he asked, deadly quiet. She shook her head. "They never gave a name. I think it's some drug crew he got involved with. I'm not sure. It wasn't the whole truth, her." Gut screamed that this was more than some local gang, but she still couldn't bring herself to speak the name that hovered in the back of her mind, Angelo. Matteo's eyes flashed with fury. "These bastards grabbed a teenage boy to extort his sister? On my territory?" The outrage in his voice was unmistakable. "I will make them pay for this." Before Angelina could blink, Matteo released her and pulled a sleek smartphone from his vest pocket. He pressed a speed dial and barked terse orders, his tone all business and aggression. "Enzo, bring the car around. Have Franco and 2 others meet me downstairs now. We have a situation." He hung up almost before his man finished acknowledging. Her heart jumped in alarm. "What are you doing?" She stammered as Matteo slipped his phone away and strode down the hall with purpose, snagging his discarded suit jacket from a chair. Matteo shrugged on the jacket and adjusted the holster beneath it. Only then did Angelina notice the black handgun now tucked securely against his side. A shiver of fear and bizarre relief shot through her. Matteo was arming himself to help her. "I'm getting your brother back," he said, as if stating the obvious. "We'll deal with these vermin." Angelina hurried after him, her mind whirling. Part of her felt an overwhelming rush of gratitude. She wouldn't be alone in this after all. But another part was terrified. Matteo's help could mean an all-out bloodbath. "Please, Mr. Vitale," she implored, catching his arm. The muscle beneath her fingers was hard as granite, vibrating with barely restrained violence. "This is my family, my problem. I appreciate you want to help, but I can't drag you into this. It's too dangerous." Matteo stopped abruptly and turned to face her. Her small hand still rested on his forearm, and he glanced at it before his dark eyes lifted to hers. "Dangerous?" he echoed, voice low. "Angelina, do you truly think I would let you run off into danger alone?" He stepped closer, eliminating the space between them. Angelina's breath caught as she tilted her head back to maintain eye contact. His face was inches from hers now, all hard angles and simmering anger on her behalf. "You belong to me," Matteo said, the words a soft rumble. "You work under my roof. That makes you my responsibility, mine to protect." Angelina's lips parted in surprise. "You belong to me." The possessive declaration sent a strange warmth blooming through her chest, cutting through the cold dread for one bewildering moment. Matteo's hand came up to cup her cheek, rough pat of his thumb wiping a tear. "I won't let anyone hurt you," he murmured, almost gentle. "Or your family." Her resolve crumbled. She had never seen this side of him. Fiercely protective, almost tender. It undid her. With a choked sob, Angelina nodded. "Oh, okay." His thumb brushed her cheek one last time before he released her, and took her hand instead. "Good," he said. "Now come. We haven't a second to waste." Matteo practically dragged Angelina into the private elevator that opened directly to his penthouse. The moment the doors closed, he was on his phone again, issuing rapid-fire commands to his subordinates. She stood pressed to the mirrored wall, heart hammering as she listened. "Pier 27, Matteo snapped into the device. "Old warehouse. Likely 6 or more hostels holding a teenage boy. I want eyes on it from a distance. No one engages until I'm there." He paused, listening to the response. "Yes, the sister's with me. We're en route in 5. He ended the call and turned to find Angelina watching him, her face pale but determined. "We'll get him back," he assured, pocketing the phone. "I promise you." She managed a shaky nod. Everything was happening so fast. Less than 15 minutes ago, she'd been sobbing in a corner alone. Now, Matteo Vitale was mobilizing an operation to save Nico. It felt surreal. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely audible. "You don't understand how much—" "We can talk later," Matteo interrupted gently. He shrugged off his suit jacket again and draped it over her shoulders. Only then did she realize she was shivering. His jacket was still warm from his body heat, enveloping her in the scent of smoke and cedar. "I need you focused and steady," he said. "Stay close to me once we arrive and do exactly as I say." "Understood?" Angelina swallowed, clutching the jacket to herself. "Yes, sir." The elevator doors slid open to the private garage beneath the building. A black Mercedes sedan idled just outside, and 2 of Matteo's men stood by. The instant they saw their boss stride out with Angelina in tow, they jumped into motion. One opened the rear door for them, while the other handed Matteo an assault rifle with practiced efficiency. Angelina's eyes widened at the weapon, but Matteo passed it to one of the men, opting to keep only his handgun visible. He helped her into the back seat with a surprisingly gentle hand on the top of her head, shielding her as she slid in. Then he rounded the car and got in beside her rather than the front, perhaps to stay close, or to shield her with his own body if needed. "Drive," Matteo ordered curtly. The driver, Enzo, hit the gas, and the sedan surged out of the garage into the sleeping city streets. Angelina pressed herself against the leather seat, hands twisting in Matteo's jacket around her. The city lights streaked by in a blur of neon and darkness. Matteo sat close, not quite touching her, but she could feel the coiled tension radiating off him. In the dim interior, he glanced her way and, noticing her nervous fidgeting, he reached over and took one of her hands in his. His grip was warm and steady. "It'll be all right," he said quietly. Angelina looked at his strong hand holding hers and felt a measure of calm fight through the terror. She nodded slightly. I'm so scared for him," she admitted, voice quavering. Saying it out loud made her feel exposed, but Matteo's presence compelled honesty. "I know." Matteo's tone gentled, a rare softness. "We'll get your brother back, Angelina." She believed him, had to believe him. She tightened her fingers around his. In that moment, it didn't matter that he was a hardened criminal and she his lowly maid. He was the only hope she had, and he was here. Minutes later, Matteo's phone buzzed. He pressed a button, putting it on speaker. A man's tense voice filled the car. "Boss, we have eyes on the target. Black van pulled into the warehouse at Pier 27 about 2 minutes ago. We count 6 armed men. They dragged a teenage boy inside. Looks roughed up, but alive." Angelina released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Nico was alive. "We're 5 minutes out," Matteo replied. "Keep your distance and do nothing until I give the go. I don't want them panicking and hurting the boy." "Copy that, boss. We'll watch and wait." Matteo ended the call. He gave Angelina's hand a reassuring squeeze. "Hear that? Nico's alive. We'll have him home soon." She nodded, voice failing her as relief and fear collided. She silently prayed to every power listening that Matteo was right. They sped toward the waterfront, dawn still just a hint of gray on the horizon. As they neared the docks, the city's glitter gave way to the eerie, deserted expanse of the industrial port. Stacks of rusting shipping containers and derelict warehouses loomed out of the darkness. Enzo killed the headlights as the car turned down a rutted access road. "Half a click away, boss," he said over his shoulder. Matteo let go of Angelina's hand and unholstered his pistol. He checked the chamber in one swift motion. "Stay down until I say," he instructed her firmly. The car rolled to a stop behind a row of stacked containers. The driver cut the engine. Immediately, the night's silence pressed in, broken only by the distant lapping of water against the docks and Angelina's own thundering heartbeat. Matteo turned to her, his face a mask of focus in the semi-dark. "Angelina, I need you to listen carefully," he said. "I want you to stay in cover behind me or one of my men at all times. If shooting starts, get down low and don't move until I come for you. Understand?" Her throat was so dry it hurt to speak. "I understand." He held her gaze for a beat, then nodded. "Good girl." The rear doors opened quietly, as Enzo and the other guard, Franco, flanked them. Matteo stepped out, then reached back to help Angelina. The moment her feet touched the ground, one of the men pressed a small handgun into her hand. She recoiled, wide-eyed. Matteo gently pushed it back toward her. "Take it," he whispered, "for protection." Her fingers curled uncertainly around the cold metal, but she nodded. She hoped to God she wouldn't have to use it. Staying low, their group advanced from behind the containers. The warehouse in question stood about 50 yards ahead, a squat concrete building with a corrugated metal roof. A single dirty bulb above a loading door cast a weak circle of light. In that circle, 2 sentries with guns slung over their shoulders paced idly. Far off to the side, Angelina could just make out the black shape of the van parked by a loading ramp. Matteo's men melted into the shadows, circling to take flanking positions. Matteo guided Angelina behind a stack of wooden pallets about 20 yards from the entrance. Her heart hammered so loud she was sure it would give them away. She gripped the pistol with slippery, sweating hands, trying to remember anything useful from the one shooting lesson a bodyguard had given the household staff ages ago. Matteo leaned close, his breath warm at her ear. "Stay here," he breathed. "I'll draw them out. If things go south, run back to the car." Angelina's stomach clenched. "Be careful," she mouthed, barely a whisper. He gave a ghost of a grin and slid into the darkness. Moments later, a clatter echoed from the opposite side of the warehouse, like a thrown rock skittering across pavement. The 2 guards snapped to attention. "You hear that?" one muttered, already moving toward the sound. The other followed, guns raised. Within seconds, they disappeared around the corner, pursuing the noise. Matteo's diversion. Angelina held her breath, waiting. A muffled scuffle sounded from the darkness. Then 2 faint thuds. She didn't know if it was lethal or not, but those guards were clearly neutralized. Matteo reappeared at her side as if by magic. He signaled with a hand gesture, and the other 2 of his men darted forward, silently slipping through the half-open loading door. Matteo then took Angelina by the elbow. "Stay right behind me," he whispered. They entered the warehouse. The interior was cavernous, lit only by a few hanging work lamps that cast long, ominous shadows among stacks of crates. The air smelled of dust and mildew. Angelina's eyes darted frantically in the gloom, searching for Nico. She spotted him almost at once, and her heart seized. Nico was on his knees in the center of the concrete floor, hands bound behind his back, face bloodied. A burly man in a leather jacket fisted a hand in his hair, keeping him in place. 4 more thugs formed a loose circle around them, rifles in hand. "Please." Nico's voice was hoarse, cracking in pain. "I'll tell my sister. She's coming with the money." One of the armed men, tall, bald, with a spiderweb tattoo on his scalp, stepped forward and struck Nico across the face with the back of his hand. "Shut up," he snarled. "Your sister's late. Maybe we should send her a piece of you to show we mean business." Angelina had to bite down on her hand to stifle the cry that rose in her throat. "You monsters." Matteo's gloved hand closed over hers, steadying her. In the dim light, she saw his eyes sweep the scene, cold and calculating. He leaned to her ear, the faintest whisper, "On my signal. Get down." She nodded, her pulse roaring in her ears. At that moment, one of the thugs near Nico glanced toward the door and tensed, sensing movement in the darkness. "Hey," Matteo acted. In a blur, he stood and fired 2 silenced shots. "Pfft, pfft." The man's words died as he crumpled, a dark blossom spreading on his chest. Chaos exploded. The warehouse echoed with shouts. Angelina dropped flat behind the crate stack, heart in her throat. The remaining kidnappers opened fire wildly toward the door. Muzzle flashes lit up the dark. Bullets sparked off metal pillars. Angelina covered her head, trembling. Matteo rolled behind a steel drum, narrowly avoiding a spray of gunfire. From the shadows on the opposite side, Enzo and Franco emerged and returned precise shots. Another thug yelped and went down, clutching his leg. Amid the gunfight, the leader, the tattooed man, realized they were outmaneuvered. Snarling in rage, he grabbed Nico, hauling the dazed teen up and shoving a pistol to his temple. "Stop shooting or the kid dies," he bellowed. Everything went still at that. The echoes of gunfire faded, smoke hanging in the air. Angelina dared to peek out. Her blood ran cold. The tattooed man was backing away toward a side exit, using Nico as a human shield. Nico's eyes were wild with terror above the gag in his mouth. Matteo stepped from cover, gun trained steadily on the man but finger off the trigger. His face was a mask of lethal calm. "Let him go," he said, voice eerily level. "You're not walking out of here with him." The thug barked a laugh, pressing the barrel harder against Nico's skull. "Try me. I dropped this kid, I'm dead anyway. At least if I kill him. Maybe I get to see you suffer before I go." Angelina's stomach lurched. She saw Matteo's jaw clench, but his aim never wavered. "Think carefully," Matteo said, each word measured. "You harm one hair on that boy's head, I will make your death last for days," the man sneered, dragging Nico closer to the exit. "Big talk, but I know you won't risk your investments, little brother." His eyes flicked to Angelina's hiding spot, having apparently deduced who she was. "Come out, girl. Show your face or lover boy here gets a bullet in his..." Angelina's blood went cold. How did he... Then realization. They thought she was Matteo's mistress or lover, some kind of investment. Perhaps Angelo had lied to them about her importance. Regardless, her cover was blown. With trembling legs, Angelina stood from behind the crates. "Don't!" Matteo hissed, but it was too late. She stepped forward into the dim light, raising her empty hands. "I'm here," she called, voice shaking. "Please let my brother go. I'll stay with you if you want a hostage instead." The tattooed thug grinned viciously. "That's sweet. But the boss didn't come for you, darling. He came for him." He jerked Nico's head to emphasize. Angelina's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I thought. "You wanted money? A slow clap echoed from the side shadows. A familiar voice answered her, dripping with cruel amusement. Oh, this was never about the money. Angelina's heart nearly stopped. From the darkness beyond Nico and the thug, a figure emerged. He wore a midnight blue designer suit, an outfit utterly out of place among these dockyard criminals, yet spattered with drops of blood across the collar and sleeve. His face was lit by the hanging lamp as he came forward, and Angelina's chest constricted with disbelief and fury. Angelo Vitale, Matteo's younger brother, the very man she'd suspected but prayed wasn't involved, now revealed as the puppeteer of this nightmare. Angelo gave a mock pout. Sorry to disappoint, Angelina, he drawled her name, stepping around the tattooed thug to face Matteo across the open space. I'm afraid dear Nico here was just bait. Matteo's eyes went wide with shock, then narrowed into a murderous glare. Angelo, he spat. What the hell have you done? Angelo's lip curled. His handsome face, so like Matteo's in bone structure, twisted with something rotten. What I had to, big brother. He spread his arms in a grand gesture. You wouldn't listen to me. You wouldn't see me. So I found a way to get your attention. Angelina's head whipped between them, confusion mingling with outrage. This was about them, not money or turf. Angelo orchestrated this to provoke Matteo. Matteo's voice vibrated with barely controlled rage. You used an innocent kid. Terrorized his sister. All to get at me? Are you insane? Angelo barked out a laugh. Spare me the moralizing. We both know the kind of man you are. He nodded toward Angelina, a sick smirk on his lips. Though I must say, it surprised me to see you so worked up over a maid. When did the untouchable Matteo Vitale start playing knight in shining armor? Angelina saw Matteo flinch, just barely, but his aim at Angelo never wavered. Release the boy, Matteo ordered, steel in his tone. This is between us. Angelo shook his head slowly, that smug grin still plastered on his face. No, Matteo. This involves her. He pointed the gun in his hand. Angelo, too, was armed, Angelina realized with dread. Directly at her. Sweet, lovely Angelina. I gave you a chance with me, and you threw it in my face. His eyes flicked to Matteo. Did you know she spurned me? Me, your own brother. She preferred to stay true to her duties as your little maid. He practically spat the last word. Angelina felt Matteo's gaze flicker toward her in question. Shame and fear rushed through her. 2 nights ago, Angelo had cornered her in a quiet hallway. He'd been charming at first, offering expensive gifts and insinuating she could be special to him if she wanted. When she politely, then firmly refused, his temper snapped. He'd grabbed her, whispering threats about how easily he could ruin her life. Or hurt Nico. She'd managed to pull away and run, but his parting words haunted her. No one says no to me. You'll regret this. Now here they were. Matteo's face hardened as the pieces clicked. All this because she rejected you? He asked, disbelief and disgust mingling in his tone. Angelo sneered. Don't act so high and mighty. You think I don't see how you look at her? The great Matteo Vitale, besotted with his maid. He chuckled darkly. That's why I chose her. I knew taking Nico would draw her out, and that you'd come rushing to play hero. I wanted to watch you squirm, brother. To show everyone that Matteo has a weak spot, and it's that pretty thing trembling over there. Angelina's cheeks burned at his words, but any denial died on her tongue. The truth was laid bare. Matteo had come for her. He did care, so much that Angelo built an entire scheme on it. Matteo's stance shifted, fury rolling off him. You've betrayed the family and lost your mind, he said low. Let the boy go, Angelo. I might let you walk out of here alive so father can deal with you. Angelo's expression flickered at that, a hint of fear, but he masked it quickly. Too late for that. I'm in control now. In a flash, Angelo lunged sideways and seized Angelina, yanking her against his chest. She cried out as his arm locked around her neck, his gun pressing to her temple. Everything went into horrifying slow motion. Nico, momentarily forgotten by the tattooed thug, took the chance to wrench free and stagger toward Matteo. Franco darted forward and pulled Nico to safety behind a crate, cutting his bonds with a quick slash of a knife. Angelina saw her brother collapse into the guard's arms, but her own situation was dire. Angelo's breath was hot and ragged by her ear. How about it, brother? He called out, dragging Angelina backward toward the exit. You let me walk, and maybe I don't put a bullet in your little obsession's pretty head." Matteo's gun tracked them, but he couldn't risk a shot with Angelina as a shield. His face was taut with fear and wrath. "Angelo, let her go," he growled. "Your fight is with me." Angelo laughed sharply. "There's my big brother, always playing the noble boss." He pressed the muzzle harder to Angelina's temple, making her whimper. "Drop the gun, Matteo, or I decorate the floor with her brains." Angelina squeezed her eyes shut, tears leaking. Matteo's gun slowly lowered. He placed it on the ground and kicked it away. "All right," he said through gritted teeth. "Just don't hurt her. You can do whatever you want with me." "No," Angelina choked out, struggling futilely in Angelo's iron grip. "Matteo, don't—" Angelo tightened his arm, cutting off her words. "Hush now," he hissed. Then louder to his brother, "That's sweet, Matteo. Selfless, even. But this isn't a negotiation." His next words were icy. "I'm going to kill her. Right in front of you. Then maybe I'll kill you. Or maybe I'll let you live with the pain." "Haven't decided," Matteo snapped. With a roar unlike anything Angelina had heard, he charged forward. Angelo fired once, twice. One bullet grazed Matteo's upper arm, but he didn't falter. In a heartbeat, he crashed into Angelo, knocking the gun from his brother's hand and Angelina out of Angelo's grip. Angelina stumbled and fell to the concrete as the two brothers went down hard, trading furious blows. Matteo's men surged in. Franco pulled Angelina out of the fray, shielding her as Enzo trained a gun on the tattooed thug, who now stood uncertainly off to the side without a hostage. The thug dropped his weapon and raised his hands, deciding it wasn't worth his life. Enzo moved to secure him, leaving the Vitale brothers grappling alone in the center of the warehouse. Matteo was larger and fueled by righteous rage. Angelo fought with desperate ferocity, but he was no match. Matteo slammed his brother onto his back and landed a devastating punch across Angelo's jaw. There was a sickening crack. Angelo sputtered, blood spraying from his mouth. "That," Matteo growled, punctuating each word with another punch, "is for threatening my family." On the last, Angelo's head snapped to the side and he went limp, groaning. Two more of Matteo's guards finally rushed forward and hauled Angelo's barely conscious form up. Matteo stood, chest heaving, blood trickling from the graze on his arm and a split on his lip. He wiped the blood on the back of his hand, gaze never leaving Angelo's battered face. Angelina pushed free of Franco's protective hold and ran to Matteo. "Matteo!" she cried, tears streaming as the adrenaline dump nearly overwhelmed her. She flung her arms around him without thinking, needing to feel that he was alive, that both of them were. For a heartbeat, Matteo stood rigid in surprise. Then he wrapped her in his arms, crushing her to his chest. "It's over," he murmured against her hair, voice rough. "You're safe. Nico's safe." Behind them, Enzo approached, dragging the leader thug with him. "Boss, what do you want done with this one?" he asked, nodding at the terrified, tattooed man. Matteo loosened his embrace of Angelina slightly, turning to glare at the thug. "Call the usual cleaner crew. They can take out the trash." The thug visibly blanched, understanding all too well what that meant for him and his fallen comrades. Angelina shivered, but she couldn't find it in herself to pity the man who had brutalized her brother. "And him?" Enzo gestured to Angelo, who was held upright between two guards, semi-conscious and coughing blood. Matteo's expression was a mix of fury and heartbreak as he regarded his brother. In that moment, he looked tired, far older than his 32 years. "Him I'll deal with personally," Matteo said quietly. "Get him out of here," the men nodded. As they dragged Angelo away, he lifted his head one final time, bloody spittle on his chin. His swollen eyes tried to focus on Matteo and Angelina. "This isn't over," he slurred. But there was little heat left in his voice. Matteo gave a slight signal, and one of the guards delivered a sharp blow to the back of Angelo's head, knocking him out. They hauled his limp body out into the night. Within moments, the warehouse was silent, except for Angelina's soft sobs and Nico's whimpering as Franco finished untying him. Angelina rushed to her brother, and Matteo followed protectively close. Nico's face was bruised and tear-streaked, but when he saw Angelina, he mustered a wobbly smile behind the gag still loosely hanging around his neck. "Angie," he croaked when she pulled it down. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Shh, it's okay," Angelina soothed, carefully wrapping her arms around him. He winced, ribs tender, but leaned into her hug. Matteo knelt and shrugged off his vest, then his fine dress shirt, leaving him in an undershirt. Without hesitation, he draped the clean garment around Nico's shaking shoulders to keep the boy warm. Angelina watched, heart swelling at the gentle gesture. Matteo looked at Nico with an expression she'd never seen on him, something like remorse and care. "You did good, kid," Matteo said quietly, one large hand lightly patting Nico's back. "It's over now. You're safe." Nico stared at Matteo, eyes wide. "You're him," he mumbled in awe and fear. The boss." Matteo actually smiled a little. "That's right, and you're Angelina's brother, which means you're under my protection too." Fresh tears brimmed in Angelina's eyes at that. She mouthed thank you to Matteo over Nico's shoulder. He gave a small nod in return, the corners of his mouth softening. Sirens keened in the distance. Someone had likely heard the brief gunfire. Matteo's men immediately began scattering, melting into the darkness to avoid any entanglements with law enforcement. By the time 2 police cruisers cautiously rolled up to the warehouse minutes later, they found nothing except a few unconscious thugs tied up neatly with zip ties, ready for collection. And 3 civilians, battered and exhausted, sitting by the curb. Angelina cradled Nico to her side while a paramedic checked him over. Matteo hovered close, refusing treatment for his own minor wounds, though a medic insisted on wrapping his grazed arm. He kept his eyes on Angelina and her brother the entire time, as if assuring himself they were truly safe. When the flurry of police questions came, Matteo smoothly took control. He presented himself as a concerned citizen, Mr. Vitale, a local businessman, who had tracked down the people responsible for kidnapping his maid's brother. He portrayed it as him acting in defense of his employee's family. The police seemed both skeptical and intimidated, but given the thugs gift-wrapped for them and Matteo's impeccable, if fabricated, account, they had little choice but to accept it. They knew who he was, everyone did, but in the absence of proof of wrongdoing on his part, there was nothing they could do that night except take statements and clear the scene. As dawn broke pale and pink over the Chicago skyline, Angelina found herself riding in the back of an ambulance with Nico, while Matteo rode up front. Nico drifted in and out of a doze, the trauma and exhaustion finally catching up. She held his hand, brushing blood-matted hair from his forehead, gratitude and relief washing over her in waves so intense she felt lightheaded. Her gaze shifted to the front, where through the small partition window she could see Matteo's profile. He was speaking in a low voice to someone on his phone, likely handling the aftermath with his people. The paramedics had tried to get him to go to a hospital for a proper check on that bullet graze and possible concussion. Angelo had gotten a punch or 2 in, but Matteo refused. Instead, he arranged for a private physician to meet them at his penthouse. Penthouse. Home. For that was essentially what Matteo's home had become to her in the month she'd worked there. And now, after everything, would it ever be the same? Angelina looked down at her brother. Safe, alive, and a tear of gratitude slipped free. Whatever else came of this nightmare, Nico was safe. That was all that mattered. When they reached Matteo's high-rise, his staff were already discreetly prepared. His personal physician quickly ushered Nico into a guest suite to properly treat his injuries. A mild concussion and some nasty bruising, but nothing broken. Matteo's housekeeper, a motherly woman named Maria, pressed a cup of hot sweet tea into Angelina's hands and insisted she drink it. Only after Nico was resting comfortably under sedation did Angelina finally allow herself to breathe. It was over, truly over. Angelo was neutralized. On Matteo's orders, he'd been whisked out of the country at once, exiled to a remote family property under guard. He would never hurt her or anyone else here again. Matteo had seen to that personally. Exhausted and heartsick, Angelina wandered to the floor-to-ceiling windows of Matteo's penthouse living room. The morning sun streamed in, gold and gentle, as if mocking the terror of the night before. She wrapped her arms around herself, Matteo's jacket still hanging off her shoulders, and stared unseeing at the skyline. Soft footsteps approached. She didn't jump. She somehow sensed it was him even before he spoke. "Angelina?" His voice was low and careful. She turned slowly. Matteo stood a few paces away, freshly changed into a black dress shirt open at the collar and gray slacks. A bandage peeked out from under the shirt on his upper arm. He looked every bit the powerful Mafia lord again, except for his eyes. In those dark depths lingered a vulnerability, worry that she had never imagined she'd see there. "How's Nico?" he asked gently. "Sleeping," she said. "Dr. Alessi said he'll recover fully." Matteo nodded, relief evident in the slight easing of his shoulders. He took a tentative step closer. "And you?" he asked. "Are you all right?" Angelina opened her mouth to give a polite default answer, but found she couldn't lie. Not after what they'd been through. I will be," she murmured. Her gaze dropped to the floor as a flush of emotion heated her cheeks. "Thanks to you." Matteo's fingers twitched at his sides, like he was resisting the urge to reach for her. "Angelina," he began, voice rough, "about what Angelo said, about why he did all this." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "He did it to hurt you," she said quietly. "Because he thought you cared for me." Matteo swallowed. Silence hung between them for a moment, heavy with things unspoken. Finally, he exhaled slowly. "He wasn't wrong," Matteo confessed, stepping forward. "I do care for you. More than I should, probably." Angelina's heart skipped. Hearing him say it plainly was different than piecing it together from implication. "Why?" she asked in a small, uncertain voice. "I'm nobody, just a maid." Matteo's eyes flashed with frustration. In 2 strides, he closed the remaining distance between them. "Don't ever say that," he nearly growled. "You are not nobody." She blinked, startled by his intensity. Matteo gentled his tone, lifting a hand to hesitantly tuck a loose strand of her hair behind her ear. "Angelina, from the moment you set foot in my house, He faltered, searching her face as if the right words might be written there. "At first I told myself it was just physical attraction. Any man would notice a beautiful woman. But it was more. I found myself watching for your smile when you dusted the shelves, or listening for your voice humming in the halls. I looked forward to seeing you each day in ways I had no right to." Angelina's breath caught. She'd had no idea. Matteo was always so controlled, so distant. To hear that he'd secretly felt this way. He continued, words tumbling out now. "I kept my distance because I thought it was safer for you if I didn't get involved. But tonight, when I heard you on that phone, when I realized you were in danger, I didn't hesitate." His hand cupped her cheek, tilting her face up so she could see the raw sincerity in his expression. "I would burn this whole city to keep you safe. Seeing you cry, hearing you beg, it broke something in me." Tears slipped down Angelina's cheeks, but this time not from fear, from the overwhelming emotion swelling inside her. "I was so afraid," she whispered. "Afraid of losing Nico, and I was afraid you'd be hurt too. When Angelo had that gun on you, Her voice broke. Matteo shushed her softly. He brushed her tears away with his thumb, his touch warm and slightly rough. "I'm all right," he promised. "We're both here, safe." A shadow of pain flickered in his eyes. "I'm only sorry it came to this, Angelo. I never imagined he could do something so monstrous. I knew he was troubled, but..." He closed his eyes for a moment. "He's gone now. He won't ever come near you again." Angelina wrapped her fingers around the hand he pressed to her cheek. It was such an intimate gesture, yet it felt natural. "It wasn't your fault," she said. "You couldn't have known he'd do this." Matteo's jaw tightened. "I should have seen the warning signs. I was blind because he was my brother, and you paid the price." He opened his eyes, the anguish in them clear. "I dragged you into my world simply by having you work here. I put you in proximity to a snake like Angelo. I'm so sorry, Angelina." She shook her head firmly. "No, Angelo made his own choices. None of this is on you." Summoning courage, she added, "And if I hadn't been working here, I wouldn't have had you to save us." A silence fell, but it was warm now, an almost tender quiet as they regarded each other. The morning sun painted Matteo's features in soft light, and Angelina realized she was openly caressing the back of his hand with her thumb as she held it to her cheek. She quickly blushed and started to pull away. Before she could, Matteo made a low, resolute sound in his throat and closed the remaining inch between them. His other arm slipped around her waist, drawing her against his body in a gentle but unyielding hold. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. Angelina felt her heart flutter wildly. I don't want you to, she whispered, voice trembling not with fear but anticipation. That was all he needed to hear. Matteo lowered his head and captured her lips with his. The kiss was soft at first, almost tentative, his mouth moving over hers with aching gentleness. Angelina's eyes fluttered shut as a wave of warmth coursed through her. She slid her arms up around his neck, rising on tiptoe to press closer. Matteo made a low noise deep in his chest, and the kiss deepened. His lips grew more insistent, passion breaking through the careful restraint. Angelina responded in kind, matching him with a desperate fervor of her own. For a long, timeless moment, the world fell away. There was no Mafia, no violence, no fear, only the two of them, clinging to each other in the golden morning light. Matteo's kiss told her what his words only hinted at. You're mine. Thank God you're safe. I need you, she answered with every soft movement of her lips. I'm here. You saved me. I'm yours. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Matteo pressed his forehead to hers, eyes closed as he savored the closeness. Angelina realized she was crying again. Silent, happy tears this time. He noticed, too. With a tender groan, he kissed the tracks of moisture on her cheeks. I've wanted to do that for so long, Matteo confessed against her skin. I was a fool to wait. Angelina let out a shaky little laugh. I'm glad you did. He pulled back just enough to look at her directly. You are? There was a touch of vulnerability in his tone, as if he couldn't quite believe this reality. She nodded, managing a smile. I was scared of you at first, I'll admit. You can be intimidating. That earned a dry huff from him. But I also saw glimpses. The way you treated your staff fairly, even kindly sometimes. The way you helped Maria's son get a job. Little things. And I found myself caring. Matteo's face lit with a slow, brilliant smile. One that made him look years younger, erasing the usual hardness. Angelina's heart skipped at how handsome he was when he smiled like that at her. I don't deserve you, he said softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. But I'm too selfish to let you go. Not unless you truly want to. Angelina's answer was immediate. She threw her arms fully around him, hugging him with all her strength. Don't you dare send me away, she murmured into his shoulder. He held her tightly, resting his chin atop her head. Never. After a beat, a wry chuckle rumbled through him. I actually had this absurd notion to pack you and Nico off somewhere safe after this. To try giving you a normal life away from me. But I knew I couldn't stand it, and it appears I have no talent for staying away from you anyway. She leaned back to gaze up at him. A normal life sounds nice, but it wouldn't be my life if you weren't in it. Saying it aloud made her cheeks warm, but she forged on, voice tender. I'm not afraid of who you are, Matteo. I only ever feared you didn't care. But now... He bent and stole another brief, fervent kiss, as if to erase any lingering doubt. Now you know, he murmured, his thumb caressing her lower lip. A polite cough from the doorway made them jump apart slightly. Maria stood there, trying to hide a knowing smile. Mr. Vitale, she said, eyes respectfully averted to spare their embarrassment. Dr. Alessi has finished with the boy. He's asking for his sister. Angelina flushed scarlet, and Matteo cleared his throat, stepping back yet keeping one arm protectively around her waist. We'll be right there, Matteo replied. Maria nodded and left, the door clicking shut behind her. Angelina bit her lip, suddenly shy again now that the heat of the moment had cooled. Should they have been more discreet? Her mind caught up to what had just happened. She'd kissed her Mafia boss in the middle of his living room. And it felt more right than anything in her life. Matteo sensed her sudden bashfulness and gently lifted her chin. Don't, he said softly, reading her mind with ease. Don't second-guess this. She managed a smile and shook her head. I'm not. It's just a lot to take in. He nodded, understanding. We'll take it one step at a time. There's no rush. His eyes glinted. Though I can't say I'll be able to hide how I feel about you from the staff. Angelina laughed, the sound light and genuine. It felt foreign after all the fear, but wonderfully so. They might have already guessed, she teased gently. Matteo smirked. I wasn't exactly subtle tonight. Her expression turned serious, gratitude welling up again. You really risked everything for us, she said. Thank you doesn't seem like enough. Matteo brushed a kiss to her forehead. Seeing you safe is all the thanks I need. He offered his arm then, a touch of playful formality. Shall we go check on Nico? Angelina looped her arm through his, leaning into his side with a contentment she never imagined she'd feel. Together, they walked toward the guest quarters where her brother rested. In the doorway, Angelina paused. Matteo, she whispered. He looked down at her, eyebrows raised. She stood on tiptoe and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. I'm just really happy you were here, she said, voice thick. And not just because you saved us, but because you're here, with me. Matteo's eyes warmed. He stroked her hair once. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. They found Nico propped up on pillows, looking groggy but much better. His eyes widened at the sight of his sister on Matteo's arm, but he managed a weak grin. Hey, he rasped. Nico! Angelina darted to his side and sat on the edge of the bed, taking his hand. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, he joked softly, wincing. But his fingers squeezed hers. You okay, Angie? She nodded quickly. I'm fine. A few scrapes. Don't worry about me. Nico's attention drifted to Matteo, who stood a couple paces back, giving them space. Nico's voice went quiet and odd. You came for us, he said to Matteo. I didn't think you would. Matteo approached and laid a hand on the boy's shoulder. You're under my protection now, he said simply. No one hurts my people. Nico swallowed, nodding. After a beat, he added, You really messed up your brother for us. Matteo's expression flickered with a mix of regret and resolve. Angelo made his choices. Family or not, he crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. Nico looked between Matteo and Angelina, then a sly, sleepy smile curved his lips. So, you two kissed, huh? Angelina's jaw dropped. Nico! He gave a weak chuckle, then winced, pressing a hand to his bruised rib. Ow, don't make me laugh, he complained. But his eyes twinkled despite everything. I saw it, though. Before, when we were by the ambulance, you were holding hands. And now, well, you're basically cuddling in front of me. He gestured vaguely at how Angelina stood very close to Matteo's side, and how Matteo's hand rested lightly at the small of her back. Angelina's face burned hot. She tried to sputter a denial or explanation, but Matteo unexpectedly chuckled. Observant kid, Matteo said approvingly. He shot Nico a conspiratorial wink. Yes, I kissed your sister. I plan to do it again, many times with her permission. Oh my God, Angelina mumbled, hiding her face in her palms in mortification. Matteo! She wasn't used to this playful side of him, and certainly not at her expense. Nico laughed outright at her reaction, then winced again. Ow. But totally worth it. Matteo gently eased Angelina's hands down and tipped her chin up. His grin was boyish and utterly endearing. No need to be embarrassed, he murmured, brushing a tiny kiss to the tip of her nose since her brother was so interested. He'd have found out sooner or later. Angelina managed a half-hearted glare through her blushes. You're terrible, Matteo smirked. You'll get used to it. Nico groaned dramatically. Ugh, you guys are cute and mushy. This is going to be unbearable. All right, mister, enough, Angelina said, though she couldn't help smiling as she smoothed Nico's blanket. You need rest. Yes, ma'am, Nico quipped. Then his expression softened. Angie, I'm really sorry I got you into this. I never meant... She pressed her finger to his lips. We'll talk later. All is forgiven, okay? Just focus on getting better. Nico's eyes grew wet. He nodded. I love you, he whispered, voice cracking. Angelina's throat constricted. I love you too. Now get some sleep. Within minutes, Nico drifted off, aided by the painkillers in his system. Matteo led Angelina out of the room, quietly closing the door behind them. They stood together in the hallway, the events of the long night finally winding to a close. The adrenaline ebbed, leaving a pleasant, languid fatigue. Matteo slipped an arm around her waist. You should rest as well. You've been through hell. She realized she was bone-tired, but her nerves still hummed from everything that had happened, and from the awareness of Matteo's body so close to hers. I don't know if I can sleep, she admitted. There's too much on my mind. Matteo nodded in understanding. Then at least lie down for a while. Come. He guided her down the hall, not to her small maid's quarters, but toward his master bedroom. At the threshold, he paused. Would you like to stay with me? I promise I'll be a perfect gentleman, he added, a touch of wry humor in his tone. Angelina didn't even have to think about it. Yes, she said softly, her trust in him absolute. They entered the spacious suite and Matteo shut the door. Sunlight filtered around the drawn drapes, painting the room in muted gold. He led her to the enormous bed and pulled back the covers. Angelina hesitated, suddenly shy again. But Matteo simply kicked off his shoes and settled back on the pillows, opening his arms in invitation. Come here, he said, smiling gently. She went into his arms gladly, curling up against his side as he drew the blankets over them both. His body warmth and the steady thump of his heart under her cheek were an immediate balm to her frazzled soul. Matteo ran a hand through her hair in slow, soothing strokes. Try to rest, he murmured. In the circle of his embrace, with his heartbeat in her ear, Angelina finally felt safe enough to let her eyes drift closed. The nightmares of the night receded, replaced by the solid reality of Matteo's arms around her and the promise of what might come next. As she hovered on the edge of sleep, she heard Matteo's low whisper. I've got you, Angelina. I'm not going anywhere. She nestled closer, her arm draped across his waist. Neither am I, she mumbled drowsily. A content sigh escaped him. He pressed a final kiss to the crown of her head. Good, he whispered. They stayed there together on the balcony as day faded into night, holding each other close under the first shimmering stars. The future ahead was unwritten, uncertain as the dark sky above. But whatever darkness or light awaited them, they knew they would face it together, and for now that was enough.